What happens when a kind-hearted stranger helps an abandoned boy find his way home? This heartwarming tale explores love, loss, and redemption like never before. Her mother abandoned her child on a park bench, vanishing without a trace. An older gentleman, startled and alarmed by the sight, promptly alerted law enforcement weeks later. The man diligently tended to the meandering walkways of Emily Park with an almost parental devotion. The park, with its classic allure and elaborate features, served as a haven amidst the urban clamor, and he considered himself its steward that particular morning. A hesitant sunbeam pierced through the canopy of leaves, casting the gravel paths and rugged iron benches in an antique golden hue. Though his duties were routine each day, presented subtle variations that sustained his fondness for the profession. He felt a profound connection to every corner of the park, as if each bloom, every seat, and every path were extensions of his very being. As he meticulously redistributed the gravel, dislodged by the hasty footsteps of early morning visitors, something out of the ordinary caught his eye. At an isolated picnic table, a small boy, engrossed in his world of crayons and paper, colored with the solemnity of a dedicated artist. His diminutive form stood in stark contrast to the solitude surrounding him. The man frowned, laid his broom aside, and approached with measured strides. Reaching the boy, he knelt to his level, his knees creaking softly. "Hello, what's your name?" he inquired, gently scanning the vicinity for any adult who might be associated with the child. "Kevin," the boy replied, without looking up from his coloring book. "I'm waiting for my mom. She's at a job interview." The man nodded, though a knot of unease slowly began to form within him. "And she left. You here alone?" He pressed, his concern deepening like a midday shadow. Kevin nodded, and for a moment a silence thick with apprehension enveloped them, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves in the wind. The man decided it would be best to remain nearby, watchful and protective, without encroaching upon the small sanctuary the boy had created around himself from his new vantage point. He observed the passers-by, searching for any face that showed signs of recognition towards Kevin. It was then that he noticed him. A man with a shifty demeanor and hesitant gait, seemingly more focused on Kevin than on the park's scenic beauty. When their gazes met, the man faltered, his expression tightening, and without warning, he spun around and disappeared into the thicket. The man's heart quickened. Something was amiss. The intuition he had cultivated over many years told him the boy might be in danger. He approached Kevin once more, resolved to obtain more information without alarming him. "Kevin, has your mom ever left you here before?" he asked, attempting to sound as casual as possible. Kevin looked up at him and shook his head. "It's the first time," she said. "She wouldn't be long." The man nodded, striving to remain composed. "Let's wait for her together, okay? In the meantime, can I sit with you?" The boy smiled, relieved to have company. "Yes, you can help me color." As the man settled onto the bench beside the table, he picked up a crayon and began to color a section of the drawing Kevin had assigned him. "Your mom must be very proud of you." "Wonderful artist," he commented, seeking to reassure both the boy and himself. Kevin smiled shyly. "She likes it when I paint. She says I have talent." The man continued coloring, but his eyes constantly moved, scanning their surroundings. The memory of the man he had seen earlier refused to fade. "And what do you enjoy painting the most?" he asked, trying to keep Kevin engaged in conversation. "I like landscapes like this park," Kevin said, looking up to admire the trees and flowers. "It's very pretty here." The man nodded, sharing that fondness for the location. "Yes, it is. I look after this park. It's my job and I enjoy it immensely." "It must be a nice job," Kevin said with admiration in his childlike voice. The man smiled, grateful for the boy's innocence and candor. "It is. And meeting people like you makes it even better." As the sky transformed into shades of orange and purple with the descending sun, the man and Kevin remained seated in the park side by side. Their conversation flowed with Kevin's youthful candor and the man's quiet discernment, though the boy was initially reserved. The evident kindness of the older gentleman encouraged him to open up. "My mom said not to talk to strangers," Kevin mentioned, fiddling with a crayon between his fingers, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The man offered a warm smile, a smile that emanated a tranquility only profound experience could provide. "That's wise advice." He acknowledged his gaze, observing the horizon as the sun slowly faded. "But it's also important to be safe. It's not good to be alone in a park without anyone you know nearby." Kevin looked at his shoes, then nodded slowly, his lips forming a thin line. "She told me to stay here, that she would come back." The man's heart tightened upon hearing the conviction in the boy's voice. so akin to his own granddaughter. Emily, the recollection of her laughter and the void left by her abrupt departure in that accident, still pained him deeply. Seeing Kevin, his protective instinct intensified. He would not allow this boy to endure a similar fate. If he could prevent it, the man thought of his daughter, and how the sorrow of losing Emily had created an emotional chasm between them. They hadn't spoken much since the tragedy, both immersed in their individual grief. Helping Kevin could be a means of redemption, a way to fill that void with some measure of kindness. With the sky rapidly darkening, and no sign of Kevin's mother, the man made a decisive choice. "Let's go to my home," he said in a soft but resolute voice. "It's dangerous to remain here." When it's already night, Kevin looked at the man with uncertainty, but something in the elder's eyes instilled confidence. Hesitant at first, Kevin nodded, grasping the man's outstretched hand. Together, they walked down the streets illuminated only by lampposts to the man's humble abode. Upon their arrival, the man prepared a simple but nourishing supper. He watched as Kevin devoured the food, each bite a stark reminder of how neglected he must have been. "Do you want more?" the man inquired, observing the voracity with which Kevin ate. Kevin looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said shyly, "but I'm full after dinner." Kevin, exhausted and sated, fell asleep almost immediately on a small couch that the man had prepared with blankets and a pillow. As he observed the boy sleeping, something within his heart stirred. Kevin's presence began to fill a void he had believed to be permanent. The man settled into a chair near the couch. Watching Kevin's peaceful breathing, he mused on how life can shift in an instant, how a stranger can become an integral part of one's existence without warning. His thoughts were interrupted by the piercing ring of the telephone. The man answered, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension in his heart. "Hello," a cold, unfamiliar voice resonated on the other end. "Don't look for the boy's mother," it stated with a calmness that sent a chill down his spine. "It's not in your best interest." The phone clicked ominously. The man stood frozen, the receiver still in his hand. Who could possibly know that Kevin was with him? The fear for both their safety swelled within him. The man knew he couldn't disregard the warning, but he also couldn't abandon the boy. He walked over to the couch, kneeling beside Kevin and covering him with another blanket. "Don't worry, Kevin," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'll protect you no matter what." The elder rose and began checking the windows and doors, ensuring everything was securely locked. His mind raced frantically, weighing his options. He needed to protect Kevin, but he also needed to discover who was behind that call and why. In the stillness of the night, with Kevin asleep on the couch and the moon shining through the window, the man allowed himself a moment of introspection. The memories of his former life intertwined painfully with the present like threads of a tapestry torn by time and tragedy. The man had once been a devoted police officer, a man who wore his uniform not merely as a duty, but as a calling. For years, he patrolled the city streets, confronting challenges that demanded courage and compassion. His professional life was replete with tense and perilous moments, yet also camaraderie and mutual respect among his colleagues. It was a job he cherished, but at the end of each day, what he truly valued was returning home to his family. His home had always been a beacon of joy. Helena, his wife, was the heart of that dwelling. Together, they had forged a refuge of love and security for their son Aiden, and their daughter-in-law Jennifer. Little Emily, with her infectious laughter and zest for life, was the family's crown jewel. Though losing Helena had been a devastating blow, the presence of his family had given him the strength to persevere. But fate had other plans. Tragedy struck again when he received the fateful call that night. The accident that claimed Aiden, Jennifer, and Emily was a blow from which he never fully recovered. The crushing weight of guilt of not being there to shield them tormented him daily. "I should have been with them," he often repeated in moments of solitude. After the accident that took his family, the man faced another exceedingly difficult situation. One day, while on patrol with other officers, they mistakenly identified an innocent man wanted criminal. In the ensuing confusion, his colleague's weapon discharged, unjustly injuring the man. From that day forward, the police station and the job no longer held the same significance for him. Every corner of the city reminded him of what had transpired. Every siren, every uniform was an echo of his personal failure. He could no longer bear this burden and opted to retire, seeking a new purpose. The look in that man's eyes, filled with terror and surprise, haunted the officer's dreams. He would never forget the sound of the shot, the impact, and the man's collapse to the ground. The blood, the guilt, the despair of his colleagues. It wasn't him, God, it wasn't him. cried his partner, the one who fired the shot, collapsing to the ground with trembling hands. The officer tried to console him, but the words felt hollow. The reality was that they had failed. He had failed, and that burden was unbearable. The park became his sanctuary, though it was a significant change. Tending to the park offered a different kind of satisfaction in its paths, gardens, and benches. He discovered a tranquility that the police station could no longer provide. It was a place where he could contemplate, where he could be useful without the oppressive weight of his former badge. Each day in the park was an opportunity to heal, albeit slowly. He pruned the bushes, planted flowers, and cleaned the paths. The physical labor kept him occupied, while the natural surroundings offered silent comfort. The sounds of the birds, the whisper of the wind through the leaves all contributed to his recovery. One day, while planting a rose bush, an elderly woman approached him. "I always thought this place needed more roses. Thank you for bringing them," she said with a smile. "It's the least I can do," the man replied, surprised by the warmth he felt at her gratitude. It was a small step towards redemption, a small act of creation amidst so much pain. Now with Kevin by his side, the man felt a unique bond. The boy reminded him of Emily in ways that both hurt and comforted him. Caring for Kevin, even if just for one night, gave him a purpose, a reason to utilize all those protective skills he couldn't employ on the night of the accident. The responsibility of looking after Kevin now intertwined with the memory of his lost family, imbuing the man with a renewed determination. Dawn arrived, a pale light filtering through the curtains, casting a soft glow in the room where Kevin still slept. The gentle sound of the wind rustling the leaves outside contrasted with the stillness inside the house. The man, however, was already awake, seated at the kitchen table, with a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. Lost in thought, his eyes followed an invisible line in the air, as if seeking answers to questions he couldn't fully articulate. There was something about the aroma of coffee and the silence of early morning that reminded him of the old days at the police station, those days when work was his entire life before everything changed. He wasted no time in commencing his search. As soon as the clock struck a reasonable hour, he dialed the number of his old colleague at the station, Benjamin. He began, his voice low, attempting not to disturb the boy. "I need a favor. It's about a woman named Andrea. Her son is with me, but she's gone missing." Benjamin, on the other end of the line, paused before responding, his voice filled with concern and urgency. "Of course, send me all the details you have. We won't let this go." The subsequent hours were spent on phone calls and consultations within police databases. Benjamin and other colleagues mobilized, reigniting in the man the familiar rhythm of police investigation. Though this time the case was intensely personal and urgent, each call, each search in the records reminded him of the efficiency and camaraderie of the old days. But the emotional burden was different. There was a constant pressure in his chest, latent fear he had never felt so acutely before. However, as the morning progressed, it became evident that locating Andrea would not be simple. There were no recent records or clear clues about her whereabouts. The man felt frustrated, but he was unwilling to surrender. Meanwhile, Kevin awoke and joined the man in the kitchen. The boy seemed restless, surely sensing the tension of the situation. His large, dark eyes reflected a mixture of fear and hope, looking to the man as a beacon amidst the confusion. The man prepared breakfast for him, endeavoring to maintain a calm demeanor. He knew his composure was vital for the child's emotional stability. "Look, Kevin, we're going to find your mom, okay? But I need you to tell me everything you can recall about the past few days with her," the man said as he handed him a plate of toast. His words were gentle but firm, aiming to convey security and confidence. Kevin nodded, nibbling on his breakfast while he pondered. "Mom was sad because we lost our house. We stayed in a place with many other people for a few days. She said it was a shelter. A few days later, we went to another place. I can take you there." Kevin began, his voice low, almost a whisper, as if speaking louder might shatter something fragile and essential. As the day advanced, the man felt his own memories of loss intertwine with the urgency to protect Kevin. The guilt for not being there for his family resurfaced. But caring for Kevin offered a small measure of redemption. It was a chance to do things right this time, to ensure the boy didn't suffer the loss. As he had with renewed determination, the man planned his next move. They would gather some supplies and then head to the place Kevin had mentioned. Every minute counted, and although the path seemed uncertain, the man wouldn't allow despair to settle. "In note this time, keep hope. Kevin, we're going to do everything we can," the man said, seeing in the boy's eyes a reflection of his own determination. Kevin looked at him, his eyes filled with a seriousness that seemed too profound for a child his age. I know Mom is scared. But she's strong. She always told me that no matter how dark it gets, there's always a light to guide us back. Those words resonated with the man. A reminder of the love and hope Andrea had instilled in her son. He knelt down to Kevin's level and placed a hand on his shoulder, looking him directly in the eyes. We're going to find that light, Kevin. Together the sky was overcast, and the air was heavy with humidity. As the man and Kevin walked together through the city streets, guided by the little boy's hesitant steps, they reached a secluded spot beneath the structure of an old bridge. The scene before them was desolate. Two worn-out mattresses, a few scattered personal belongings, and faded toys. This is my home, Kevin said, his voice laden with a sadness no child should ever know. The man felt a pang in his heart as he grasped the harsh reality of Kevin and Andrea's life. They were not only unhoused, but struggling daily to stay afloat. As he inspected the area, searching for any clues that might lead them to Andrea, the man realized that the situation was far more intricate than he had initially imagined. He found nothing that could be considered a concrete lead on her whereabouts. However, Kevin's words about the men who had threatened his mother added a layer of urgency and peril to the search. Kevin, can you tell me more about the men who threatened your mom? The man asked, trying to keep his voice calm to avoid alarming the boy. Kevin looked down, nervously fiddling with the sleeve of his shirt. I don't know them. They just came and yelled things. Mom hid me under the mattresses and told me to stay quiet. The man's heart tightened. It was clear that Kevin viewed him as a protective figure, someone who could alter the course of his uncertain destiny. We're going to make sure you and your mom are safe, I promise, he said firmly, though internally uncertainty consumed him. Back at his home, the man confronted a new threat as he entered. He noticed that the door was not as he had left it. A chill ran down his spine when he discovered a message scrawled on a piece of paper on the living room table. Stop looking for her. Someone had been there, someone who not only knew about his search, but also wished to halt it. The danger felt more palpable than ever. The man knew he had to act swiftly, not only to protect Kevin, but also to unravel the mystery surrounding Andrea's disappearance. Night descended over the city, and with it a steely resolve settled within the man. He would not allow fear to dictate his actions. He would protect Kevin and find Andrea no matter the risks. As he secured all the entrances to his home and ensured Kevin was safe, the man planned his next move. The threat was real, but his determination to confront and overcome it was even greater with each decision. The line between the past that had scarred his life and the future he was determined to change for the better became clearer as the days passed. The routine of the man and Kevin had grown predictable, yet it was filled with hope. Each morning after breakfast, they would head to the park, the very place where the man had first encountered Kevin during those shared breakfasts. The simplicity of bread with jam and coffee with milk had become a sacred ritual that strengthened their bond. Kevin always insisted that the bread be cut into triangles, claiming it tasted better that way, and the man with a smile indulged the boy each time. In the park, the man scrutinized every passing face, hoping to glimpse Andrea among the crowd, while Kevin played nearby, always under his watchful eye. The man couldn't help but reflect on the first time he had seen Kevin so small and lost, and marveled at how courageous he had become. Kevin's smile, despite everything he had endured, was a beacon of hope in the man's life. The man had also expanded his search beyond the park. He telephoned hospitals, shelters, and any establishment that might offer temporary refuge for those in need. With each call, he provided a detailed description of Andrea, mentioning her dark hair, bright eyes, and the warm smile that could illuminate any room. Each negative response felt like a stab to the heart. But every time he looked at Kevin, he found the resolve to continue. The boy had become not only his responsibility, but also his inspiration. One day, while walking near the edge of the park, Kevin abruptly stopped and pointed toward a lamppost covered with event flyers and various announcements, among them a more formal poster featuring a woman's photograph caught his attention. That's my mom, Kevin shouted, running toward the post. The man quickly followed and approached to read the text beneath the photograph. The poster indicated that Andrea had been admitted to a local hospital after sustaining a severe head injury. The image of her seemed recent, intensifying both the urgency and hope in the man's heart. Let's go see her, Kevin. Let's go right now, the man said, trying to remain calm. But his heart raced with anxiety and anticipation. He grasped Kevin's hand and together they headed to the nearest bus stop. While waiting for the bus, the man attempted to soothe Kevin, who kept staring at the poster with tearful eyes filled with hope. "Stay calm, Kevin. We'll see your mom." Soon he said, trying to convey a sense of security, that he didn't fully feel himself on the way to the hospital. The man's thoughts swirled. He recalled the times he had seen Kevin cry for his mother, the nights. When the boy awoke screaming her name, now they were on the verge of finding her. And the blend of excitement and fear was overwhelming upon arriving at the hospital. His heart thumped with both apprehension and hope. They went directly to the information desk, where the man explained the situation in a hurried but clear voice. "We're looking for Andrea. My name is, and this is her son, Kevin. We saw a poster that said she had been here," he explained, noting how the receptionist softened upon seeing Kevin clinging to his hand. The receptionist checked the system and nodded solemnly. "Andrea was here. Yes, she was discharged 2 days ago. She didn't remember much about her life. Amnesia is common with severe head injuries. She was sent to a specialized shelter that can help her recover," she explained, providing the shelter's address. Thank you so much," the man said, feeling a new wave of hope wash over him. As they exited the hospital, he looked at Kevin and said, "We're one step closer, Kevin. We're going to find her." The journey to the shelter was a silent one, but filled with expectation. The man and Kevin exchanged glances now, and then, sharing a silent determination upon arriving at the shelter, they were greeted by a kind social worker. "We're looking for Andrea. She's Kevin's mother," the man stated, attempting to remain calm. The social worker smiled and nodded. "Yes, Andrea is here. Please follow me." As she guided them through the shelter's hallways, she explained, "It has been a difficult process for her, but she is recovering. The amnesia has left her disoriented. But with support and time, we hope she will recover more memories." When they opened the door to a lounge, they saw Andrea sitting by a window, gazing out at the garden. Kevin let go of the man's hand and ran toward her, shouting, "Mom!" Andrea turned, and although her gaze was confused at first, a spark of recognition appeared in her eyes. "Kevin," she whispered. For a moment, the world seemed to stop for her upon seeing him. Her face lit up with a mixture of surprise and immediate love. She jumped up and opened her arms just in time to receive Kevin in an embrace that seemed to contain years of unspoken words and accumulated affection. Tears welled up in her eyes, tracing paths of emotion down her cheeks, as whispers of "my boy, my dear boy," filled the air. The boy ran to her, and at that moment all the effort and anguish of the past days melted away. For the man, he watched as mother and son embraced, feeling a profound peace. They had managed to find Andrea, and that was the most important thing. "We're going to be okay, Kevin. We're going to be okay," the man murmured to himself, watching the scene with tears in his eyes. The man observed from a few steps back, his heart filled with deep relief and quiet joy. He had witnessed many reunions in his career, some happy, others heartbreaking, but none quite like this. There was something profoundly personal and redemptive in this moment, not just for Andrea and Kevin, but for him as well. After giving them a few minutes to reconnect, the man slowly approached Andrea. He said, in his firm but gentle voice, "I'm glad to see you two reunited." After formally introducing himself, the man made a proposal to Andrea. "Andrea, I'd like to offer you a place to stay at my home, at least until things stabilize and you can fully recover." Andrea still holding Kevin looked up at the man, her eyes showing a mixture of gratitude and amazement. "I don't know how to thank you. You've done more for us than anyone has in a long time," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's the least I can do," the man said, and for a moment memories of his own loss slipped through his mind, reminding him why he had felt such a strong impulse to protect Kevin from the start. "Let's get everything ready to go. There's a lot to do, and I want both of you to feel safe and comfortable." As they organized the details with the shelter staff and gathered Andrea's few belongings, the man felt the weight of the previous weeks beginning to lighten. There was still a long road ahead. Andrea needed to recover her health and rebuild her life, and Kevin had to adjust to a new reality. But for now, the important thing was that they were together, and that was a start. Andrea and Kevin moved in with the man who spent his savings to ensure Andrea received medical treatment. Over time, she began to regain her memory and recounted to the man how she had lost her home and the desperation that led her to live on the streets a year ago. "My life was completely different," Andrea began, her eyes reflecting a whirlwind of emotions. "When I lost my home, I felt like the whole world was collapsing under my feet. I didn't know where to go, and every day on the streets was a struggle to survive." Her voice broke as memories of those dark days flooded back. George's death left Andrea alone with a young son, and a mortgage. She couldn't pay every corner of the house that was once filled with laughter, and love now reminded her of George's absence. His laughter echoed through the empty walls, and the family photos framed a happiness that seemed from another world. Andrea felt life slipping away with each passing day without her husband, and the responsibility of raising Kevin alone overwhelmed her. Andrea had been a strong and hopeful woman, but the tragedy had left her broken. Her love for Kevin was the only thing keeping her going each night when she tucked him, and she promised him that things would get better, even though she doubted her own words inside the fear of the future. And the despair pushed her towards an abyss from which she saw no way out. Over time, financial problems accumulated, and Andrea lost the house. The mortgage became an insurmountable mountain, and the bank's calls became more constant and threatening. Andrea tried to sell what little she had of value, but it wasn't enough. Desperate, and without sufficient resources to support themselves, they were forced to live under a bridge. The bridge became their refuge, but also a constant reminder of her failure. Every day was a struggle for survival. Andrea did everything she could to keep her son safe, but options were limited. She would wake up at dawn and walk the city looking for work, any work that would allow her to earn some money to feed Kevin. On more than one occasion, she went without eating to ensure her son had something in his stomach. Andrea was willing to do anything for her son. The desperation and unconditional love she felt for Kevin were the forces that drove her every day. However, each rejection, each disdainful look when she asked for help, sank her deeper into despair. She felt that society had turned its back on her, and that filled her with a mixture of sadness and anger. One day, desperate to feed Kevin, Andrea accepted an illicit job offered by some dangerous men. She knew it wasn't the right decision, but the need for food for her son pushed her to consider the unthinkable. The men led her to an abandoned warehouse, where they explained that she had to transport a suspicious package to another part of the city. "You have no other option," one of the men said, with a cold, calculating look. "Think about your son, I know." But Andrea looked at Kevin, who was innocently playing nearby. "What's in the package? That's not your problem. Just do your job, and you'll get paid. It's that simple." As she approached the delivery location, Andrea was filled with doubts and fear. She looked at Kevin, who was sitting next to her in the car, and thought about the risk she was taking at the last moment. Her love for Kevin overcame her desperation. She couldn't go through with the job. She decided to abandon the package and return with her son, hoping to find another way to get the money they needed. Andrea's decision was driven by love and protection for her son. Despite her desperation, she couldn't endanger Kevin's life. She felt a mixture of relief and terror. She knew she would face consequences, but she couldn't betray her principles or put Kevin's safety at risk. She returned to the bridge with Kevin, trying to devise a plan to avoid the men who would surely come after her. She knew she had crossed a dangerous line and had to be prepared for the worst. However, Andrea's decision had severe consequences. The men who had offered her the job did not take her failure lightly. They began to chase and threaten her, demanding the money or the completion of the task. Andrea lived with the constant fear that these men would find her and harm her or Kevin. The constant fear ate away at her. Every shadow, every strange noise made her jump. The psychological pressure was unbearable, and her worry for Kevin multiplied. She knew she had to protect him at all costs, but she felt increasingly powerless. The threats became more intense. The men would appear at the bridge, banging on their mattresses and demanding the money. Andrea hid with Kevin, trying to keep him safe. But the situation was becoming untenable. There was no safe place for them, and Andrea knew she had to find a quick solution. Andrea's desperation reached its peak when she went to a job interview, and upon returning found the men waiting for her. In an attempt to escape, she slipped and hit her head, losing consciousness. When she woke up in the hospital, she remembered nothing of her life, not even her beloved son, Kevin. The man listened attentively, each word adding weight to his heart. "No one should have to go through that," he replied, his voice filled with firm resolve. "I'll do everything in my power to make sure you never have to face something like that again." Their conversation deepened as Andrea brought up the criminals who had harassed her. "They forced me to take jobs that went against everything I am. I felt trapped, like every decision I made only sank me deeper into a world I couldn't escape." The man frowned, feeling a mixture of anger and compassion. "Those men will pay for what they did to you. We won't let them remain free to harm others," he affirmed with determination. The conversation then took an even more personal and somber turn. Andrea, with a heavy sigh, brought up the memory of George. "He was my rock," she said softly. "And from one day to the next, I lost him because of a Mistake that should never have happened for a moment. Andrea recalled her days with George. Andrea met George in college. Both were studying in the same social sciences department and shared several classes. George was a charismatic and determined young man, always willing to help others. He was the kind of person who radiated a positive energy that lit up any room he entered. His smile was contagious, and his willingness to offer his time and effort made him well-liked among his peers. Andrea, on the other hand, was a reserved and meticulous young woman. Her dedication to her studies and her compassionate nature made her an exemplary student and a loyal friend. Her friends often told her she needed to relax a bit and enjoy college life more, but Andrea had a clear vision of her future and knew that hard work was the key to achieving it. One day, during a sociology class, groups were formed for an important project. The professor assigned Andrea and George to the same group during the group meetings. Andrea was impressed by George's clear thinking and his ability to lead without being overbearing. George, for his part, noticed Andrea's depth of analysis and her structured way of approaching problems. After several group outings, they began to spend more time together. They went to the library to study, shared coffee at the university cafe, and eventually started attending social events together. It was on one of those afternoons, while walking through the park near the university, that George, with a mixture of nerves and enthusiasm, took Andrea's hand. She surprised, but delighted, returned his smile. Andrea, George began, I've realized that every time I'm with you, everything seems clearer and more meaningful. I want to know if you feel the same. Andrea looked into his eyes, feeling a warmth she had never experienced before. George. She replied, I never thought I would find someone who understood and supported me as much as you do. Yes, I feel the same. After graduating, George and Andrea decided to get married. It was a decision they made with hearts full of love and heads full of dreams. With much effort, they managed to save enough to mortgage a small house. It wasn't easy, as both came from humble families with few resources. They worked hard to fulfill their dream of having their own home. George found a job at a logistics company, while Andrea worked as a preschool teacher. The house was modest but cozy. Every corner was imbued with the effort and love they had put into making it their home. George used to say, no matter how big or small our house is, as long as we're together, it'll be our home. A few years later, Andrea and George welcomed their son, Kevin. His birth filled the house with joy, and despite the financial difficulties, both parents felt blessed. George worked extra shifts to ensure a better future for his family, and Andrea balanced her job with caring for Kevin. Despite the challenges, they were a happy and united family. However, the happiness didn't last long. One night, while George was coming home from work, he was mistaken for a criminal wanted by the police. The confusion arose because the criminal looked similar and wore similar clothes to George. The officers, believing they had found their man, detained him violently. George tried to explain it was a mistake, but amid the chaos and confusion, he was gravely injured. George was taken to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. Andrea received a call the middle of the night informing her of the incident. She rushed to the hospital with her heart in her throat, but arrived too late. George had passed away. The news devastated Andrea, and the world she had built with so much effort crumbled in an instant. When Andrea arrived at the hospital, she was met by a doctor with a somber expression. Ma'am, I'm very sorry, said the doctor. We did everything we could, but your husband didn't make it. Andrea collapsed into a chair, her mind unable to process the magnitude the loss. No, it can't be, she murmured. He can't have left me. We have a son. We had plans. The doctor looked at her with compassion. I understand this is very difficult. If you need to talk to someone, we can call a counselor. Andrea slowly nodded, her tears falling uncontrollably. I just want to see him, she finally said, her voice breaking. They led her to the room where George lay. Andrea took his cold, lifeless hand, and at that moment, she felt as if the weight of the world had fallen on her. George, she whispered, we promised to always be together. How am I going to go on without you? After the funeral, Andrea had to face the painful reality of raising Kevin alone. Every day was a battle against sadness and despair, but she knew she had to be strong for her son back in the present. Andrea looked at the man who was pale as snow. The man felt his heart stop for a moment. The memories of that day came flooding back. He remembered the operation he was part of, where an innocent man lost his life due to a tragic mistake. Although the fatal shot hadn't come from his gun, the man had always carried the weight of remorse for not being able to prevent the tragedy. Andrea, the man said, his voice choked, there's something you need to know. Andrea looked at him with curiosity, And concern, I was one of the police officers there that day. I wasn't the one who shot, but I've lived with the remorse of not being able to do more to prevent. What happened hearing you talk about George? I realized that I can't keep hiding from the past. I want to help you and Kevin find the peace you deserve. Andrea stood still, the man's words hitting her like a blow. The initial sadness and anger gave way to deep confusion. How can I process this? Her words were a broken whisper. The man lowered his gaze, tears threatening to betray his facade of strength. I don't expect you to forgive me, Andrea. I just want you to know the truth. And I want you to know that I'm here, that I'll fight for you and Kevin to give you the safe life George would have wanted for you. Andrea saw the sincerity and pain in the man's eyes. Though shocked, she began to understand the magnitude of the remorse he had been carrying. I'll need time to understand all this, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I see your sincerity, and that means something to me. The months following the man's revelation and his decision to protect his new family were marked by intense dedication and a clear purpose, knowing he couldn't let the danger perpetually loom over Andrea and Kevin. The man reconnected with his former police colleagues. He explained the complex and dangerous situation Andrea had been involved in, and together, armed with Andrea's description and any memories she could bring to the surface, they began to unravel the gang's network. The man's efforts weren't confined to daylight hours. Entire nights were dedicated to meeting with informants who might know something about the gang's movements, reviewing files to find connections, and closely collaborating with ongoing operations. As the puzzle pieces came together, the reality of the gang's operations became clearer. From drug trafficking to smuggling, their tentacles extended deep into the city. With the collected information, the police organized a series of raids. Although the man was retired, his experience and knowledge were crucial. He actively participated in the planning and execution of the operations, ensuring every move was calculated and effective. The culmination of these efforts was the capture of the gang leaders and several key members during a coordinated night raid. The news of the arrests brought palpable relief to Andrea and Kevin. For the first time since the gang's shadow had loomed over them, Andrea could breathe without feeling the weight of fear. She felt safe, protected by the man's decisive actions, who in turn experienced deep satisfaction. He had not only secured the safety of his new family, but also restored a sense of justice that had been shaken in his own foundations years ago. The dismantling of the gang not only dispelled the fear, but also closed a dark chapter in Andrea and Kevin's lives. With the criminals behind bars, Andrea could fully focus on her recovery and rebuilding a safe future for herself and her son. Kevin, relieved of the constant threat, began to truly enjoy his childhood, exploring the world with the innocence and enthusiasm that only a child can have. The man's house, once temporary refuge, had now become a home filled with hope and new possibilities. As he watched Kevin play in the garden, Andrea beside him preparing a snack, the man allowed himself a moment of gratitude. He had found a family once again, and together they were ready to face whatever came their way, supporting each other and looking towards a brighter future. After months of turmoil, life with the man offered Andrea and Kevin an oasis of stability and care, although adjusting to this new normal wasn't easy, especially for Kevin. The boy, despite his young age, had faced a series of traumas that left deep marks on his spirit: the loss of his father, life on the streets, constant threats, and the recent separation from his mother had woven a backdrop of fear and anxiety that now began to manifest in his daily life. Kevin found it increasingly difficult to concentrate at school. Every attempt to read or write seemed to evoke memories of those dark days, causing his academic performance to plummet. Andrea, still in her own recovery process, struggled to find the energy and patience to handle Kevin's challenges, which sometimes resulted in moments of frustration and anger that only exacerbated the problem. At this critical moment, the man stepped in as an essential paternal figure for Kevin. Recognizing the boy's pain and confusion, he took it upon himself to support him personally every day after school. Not only did he help with homework, but he also used stories from his time in the police force to teach valuable life lessons and values. Additionally, the man and Kevin began spending afternoons at the park, where the boy could express his concerns in an open and safe environment. The man taught Kevin breathing and relaxation techniques that helped him manage his anxiety, facilitating a gradual recovery of his sense of security. On weekends, the man organized special outings Visits to museums, zoos, and football games, these activities not only distracted Kevin from his daily routine, but also reinforced his perception of a safe world full of possibilities. Helping him overcome his fears. Observing Kevin's transformation, Andrea began to understand more deeply the importance of patience and emotional support. Inspired by the man, she made conscious efforts to improve her communication and relationship with Kevin. Together, mother and son strengthened their bond through honest conversations and shared moments, learning to navigate their emotions with greater understanding and mutual support. The healing process was slow and fraught with challenges, but the man's constant presence and guidance provided the anchor. Kevin and Andrea needed to move forward over time. Kevin not only improved academically, but also regained his confidence and joy in life. Andrea, emotionally strengthened, found new ways to connect with her son and face life with renewed hope. Thanks to the man's tireless support and love, the family found not only recovery, but also a new beginning. The morning Andrea began looking for a job again, the air in the man's house was filled with cautious optimism. She had rebuilt her life piece by piece, supported by the man's constant presence and encouragement. And now she felt ready to take the next step. While Kevin played quietly in his room, the sound of his laughter was a palpable reminder of the progress they had all made. Andrea sat at the kitchen table surrounded by newspapers, and with her laptop open browsing online job listings. The man watched her from the kitchen doorway, admiring her determination. "Find anything interesting?" he asked, approaching to pour himself a cup of coffee. "A couple of possibilities," Andrea replied, without taking her eyes off the screen. "I want something that really lets me use my skills, maybe even something in teaching again." "You deserve that, and more," the man affirmed, leaning against the door frame. In the following months, as Andrea started working at a local school, and her love life took an unexpected turn with Mike, a charming widower she met in a support group. The man remained her unwavering support. Andrea and Mike's relationship flourished quickly, bonded by their experiences of loss and recovery, and soon they decided to get married on the day of the move to the new house with Mike and his 2 children. Andrea was filled with mixed emotions, although excited to start this new chapter. She felt a deep gratitude towards the man who had been her rock during the hardest times. "I don't know how to thank you for everything," Andrea said, as she packed the last boxes. Kevin, who was playing with Mike's children, seemed to have finally found the brother he never had. The man, with a melancholic smile, responded, "Seeing you all happy is all the thanks I need. Just promise me you'll come visit." "Of course we will," Andrea affirmed, hugging him tightly. "You'll always be part of our family." When Andrea and Kevin left the man's house, felt strangely silent. Despite the loneliness, he felt satisfied knowing he had played a crucial role in guiding them towards a brighter future. Sitting on his porch, watching the sunset, the man reflected on life's cycles. Although some doors closed, others opened, and there would always be room for new beginnings and more stories to tell. On the twilight of an ordinary Friday, the man waited at the train station. The anticipation of Andrea and Kevin's arrival gave his eyes a special sparkle, a gleam that only appeared at these moments. The station was filled with the typical weekend bustle, but for the man everything boiled down to the sound of Kevin's hurried steps coming off the train. Kevin shouted, running towards him with arms wide open, his backpack bouncing against his back with each stride. Andrea followed behind, smiling widely at the reunion. "Seems like they never get tired of each other, do they?" she commented, reaching them to give the man a warm hug. "It's true, Andrea, these moments never get old," the man responded, returning her hug with one arm and holding Kevin with the other. "How's school, champ?" he asked, turning his attention to Kevin. "Good, but I like being here with you more." Kevin confessed, his sincerity as clear as the blue spring sky. The days they spent together were filled with simple yet meaningful activities, from fishing at the nearby lake to helping the man in the garden. Each activity strengthened their bond. Even Mike, Andrea's new husband, found a place within this special dynamic. It had taken the man some time to get used to sharing his place in Andrea and Kevin's life, but Mike had proven to be a man with good heart. One afternoon, while sitting around the garden table, enjoying a barbecue, Mike raised his glass to. He toasted for being more than a friend, for being family. He looked at the man with respect and affection. "And to you all for giving me the chance to be part of something so beautiful," the man replied, his voice heavy with emotion. He wasn't a man of many words at these moments, but his gratitude was palpable. As the children played in the background, Andrea approached the man. "I never thought that after all The darkness, we could have days as bright as these, she commented, watching Kevin and the other children laugh. Yes, it's true. But I've always believed that even in the darkest times, there's a light of hope. And look now, everything we've overcome, the man said, his gaze momentarily lost in memories of darker days. Andrea nodded her hand, seeking the man's, and intertwining their fingers. Thank you for never letting go, not of my hand, nor Kevin's. You taught us that family isn't always about blood, but about heart. With the sun setting behind them, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange, the man reflected on the journey they had traveled. Happiness wasn't a place to reach, but a journey to share with the people you love. And as he watched Andrea and Kevin, he knew that every challenge they had faced together had been invaluable, because it had taught them that there was always room for a new beginning. What part of this inspiring journey touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments and follow for more heartfelt stories.